Hey everyone, this is Alex Reed with your Thursday market review. So let's see the big news, right? Let's just get right into it. The inflation data. Now, what are we looking at with inflation? Well, we have two measures of inflation that we got the prints on this week. The first was PPI, which is the Producer Price Index. And basically, PPI is the price that the wholesale prices that the producers get, the manufacturers get, and the other one obviously being CPI, which we'll get to in a second, that most people look at. But PPI is important because it as opposed to CPI, it doesn't include imports, so it's purely a domestic measure. So it gives you a good sense of the price pressures on the U.S. manufacturing base. As you can see here, it rose 0.5%. The expected was 0.3%, I believe. So it did beat expectations, and it was higher than people thought it was going to be. My thesis that we're going to be talking about today is that we are entering a new regime of entrenched inflation due to very secular trends in the economy and our culture that are going to make the idea, basically people are waiting for us to get back to 0% or 1% or even 2% interest rates, right? My thesis is that that's not happening. That's not happening anytime soon, in at least years, maybe a decade or more. For reasons that we're going to talk about. But the numbers, as we're looking at them now, PPI is up 0.5%. It beat expectations. Now, here's a little breakdown of that. You can see some of the broken out categories of that. PPI month over month. Media, as you can see, that 0.3 was the expectation. And look at this right here. From a year ago, the overall measure advanced 2.2%. So we're still, and as I'm going to explain more, we're still experiencing inflation. These numbers that come out, right, it's not, when they say inflation didn't increase, only, or the month over, it was, for instance, months ago when Biden was saying that inflation hadn't increased at all. We got a stagnant Med expectation, a stagnant CPI read. That doesn't mean that inflation didn't increase. It means that it didn't increase relative to the last measure. But a 3% inflation rate in a month is still a 3% year-over-year inflation rate between that time period. You see what I'm saying? So just because even if say inflation was below expectations, it doesn't mean that inflation didn't happen. It just means that it happened less than they thought it was going to. So it's a very nefarious market for us, because the way they report the numbers can make it seem like things are going good, but I mean, if you just look around you, and this chart sort of shows you, and we'll get to more consumer measures later, but it shows you that things are still increasing. And if you walk outside and go and live in the world, prices are still increasing. Rising gasoline prices, obviously fuel cost is a huge part of manufacturer and producer spending. The Israel-Hamas conflict and chances of the potential of a wider Middle East problem are not helping things, certainly. Saudi Arabia has come out as of earlier this week and said that they're going to help keep the price of oil stable. So which means, they had announced cuts previously, which means they may ramp up production. Oil fell 2% yesterday, I believe. So for now, it seems like the gasoline and fuel prices may at least stay stagnant, but who knows what will happen. We're in the early days of this new Middle Eastern conflict, so only time will tell, really. Now let's move on to the CPI. This is the Consumer Price Index. This was just released this morning. Everybody was eagerly anticipating it, and look at this. Consumer prices rose 0.4% in September, more than expected. So again, we have another beat in inflation. Inflation's still rising, folks. This is not going away. This is not going away. What in particular rose? Well, the supercore inflation. It's called supercore inflation. This is the stuff that you need, right? It's super core because it's not really optional buys from a consumer standpoint. It's stuff like housing, fuel, clothing. So, and if you look at this headline from Bloomberg, you can see even though the core held steady, but it doesn't mean that it's gone down. It's still increasing, but just not as much as the non-core inflation readings. Housing and gasoline are up, like we mentioned. Gasoline affects both the producers and the consumers. Clothing and used cars, they've declined a bit. However, I am wondering how the UAW auto strike, as that continues, if that will cause that trend in used cars to reverse. If you haven't followed that story, I definitely recommend checking it out because it's a huge strain on the U.S. economy and inflation in general, and it could have serious ramifications for everyone as the months tick by. Hopefully something gets solved on that front. Let's go into this a little more. This is from the Great Kobese letter. You can see here that a sort of a more broken out view of the entrenched inflation in our economy. You have 18.9% for car inflation, 10.2% for car repair, transportation's 9%, rent is 7%, homeowner inflation 7%, food 6%, meat and poultry inflation 4.8%. These numbers feel more right to me when you look at them this way. These are large inflation numbers, and I think if you go to the grocery store, if any of us go to the grocery store, you can see this, you can feel this. It's not, inflation is not barely over the estimates or at the estimates. People are being pinched, and prices just don't seem to be coming down, and in many cases they seem to still be going up, right? For instance, the Great Chipotle has raised menu prices for 4th time in 2 years. I remember when I was in college, I could get Chipotle for less than $10. It was less than a $10 meal for a giant burrito bowl or a burrito. Now I think it's like it's almost $15, after it's all said and done, which is insane because it is just a burrito, a $15 burrito. Who would have thought, right? And so this is Peter Schiff. He can be sort of a doomer. I don't agree with everything he says, and I don't really agree with the end. I think that sometimes his insights are right, but his prognostications or the ends that he derives from those insights are wrong. But I mean, let's look at this. He says, what's missing from the higher for longer interest rate narrative is that it's actually much higher forever. The days of ZIRP are over. If they return, it will unleash runaway inflation, an implosion in the dollar, bonds, and the economy. Either way, crisis is assured. I mean, he's been saying this for his whole career. And a broken clock is right, once a day, right? But he hasn't been right. He hasn't been right for a long time. And I don't think that he's right about the doomsday scenario that's unfolding. However, I do think he's right that the days of zero interest rates are over, effective zero interest rates. the thing is, we have, and COVID just hastened this, but we have the largest mass exodus of workforce in history. Why? Well, because baby boomers were the largest workforce in American history. And they're all retiring. COVID hastened that. You know, people saw, I think a lot of boomers saw, one, the economy contracting as it did during the main heat of COVID, caused a lot of companies either to downsize, and unfortunately, many boomers were, since they're older, were on the chopping blocks. But many just retired. They said, I have enough. I'm ready to go live my life. I think psychologically, maybe COVID put things in perspective for a lot of people, including boomers, and they decided just to live their life, quit their jobs, retire, and have fun. However, our workforce is not at a replacement rate that can replace the boomers. The millennials are the next biggest one, but which I am a millennial, but they're not. The manpower isn't there to replace all of these retiring boomers. So, what that means is that wage pressures, wage growth pressures, job openings, like these are the measures that the news media and the Federal Reserve uses to basically measure its interest rate prescriptions, right? Well, if you have more people exiting the workforce than entering the workforce, well, what's going to happen? There's always going to be more demand for workers, so wages are going to increase, okay, because of the demand for workers and the lack of supply of workers. You're also going to have lower unemployment numbers. So, and this is a key part that I've been thinking about recently, is that we seem to have a resilient economy right now, and everybody, because based on the unemployment numbers, I mean, unemployment's still exceptionally low. But is it a factor of that it's a strong economy and there's all these jobs, or is it a factor of that there's just not enough people to fill said jobs? And so even though employment on its face looks low, the actual economic engine of the U.S. isn't being sufficiently oiled, right? So but I think that because of the wage price pressures, because of the lack of a smaller workforce, I do think that these traditional measures of let's lower interest rates are just not really relevant anymore. And I think that because of that the 0% interest rates policies, which really were only for the past since 2008, since 2009, they're not it's not really a thing in history before that. So we got used to it. I mean, it's been a good decade, but it's not the norm. We shouldn't think it's going to be the norm. And there's no reason for, if growth can occur, if the economy can keep going without 0% interest rates, if the Fed's inflation target can hit their inflation target of 2%, 2 to 3% without having to lower interest rates, well, they're not going to lower interest rates. And I think that the lower interest rates created a lot of bad externalities in our economy, since 2009, that I do think raising them this fast is very painful, and I do think it's painful, but I almost think that if they keep them higher for longer, which is the narrative now, I do think that it can shake out a lot of the, easy money that led to bad investments over the course of the last decade. And I think we can actually create a stronger economy with a higher interest rate sustained for a longer period of time. How high will that interest rate be? Well, before the CPI index yesterday, I was looking at it. It was 29% likelihood that the Fed would increase another quarter point. However, after today's CPI, print, that likelihood has jumped to 36%. So, I mean, this is serious. This is either the Fed will not act or they'll raise a quarter point, but they're not going to cut. They're not going to cut. And their next meeting's on November 7th, by the way. So this is the likelihood that what they'll do on that meeting. But I don't think that they're going to cut. I really don't believe they might. They might leave it the same, but my odd. I mean, I know it's 36% odds that they're going to increase. I would say that they probably hold. I do think they hold, because I do think that they're seeing at least inflation maybe slow down a bit, and they're going to just wait it out for the rest of the year. But yeah, I think that if it doesn't, I mean, mortgage rates are already 8%. I mean, the housing market is cratering. People locked into low interest rate mortgages don't want to sell. People who do want to buy, they can't find inventory because of that. They also can't afford the inventory that's around because of the mortgages are just so insanely expensive. So, and the thing is when it comes to housing, I think people, housing is lots of very rich people who donate to these politicians are involved in real estate, are involved in housing. So when the housing market goes whack, I really do believe that at a certain point, there will be so much political pressure on our leaders to fix that it will alleviate itself, or not itself, but they will take measures to alleviate the pressures on the housing market. I don't know when that is. I don't know how long it'll take, but I do think it'll happen, because there's too much money tied up in real estate for it to have a bloodbath, circa 08, something like 08. And here's just another example. This goes against my point that wage growth is increasing. As you can see, it has been. Well, it's still increasing. Like I said, these are the measures. Year over year percentage change. It's still going up 4.2%, but it has slowed. So it kind of it doesn't really go against my point, but it kind of shows both sides of what I've been talking about, that the wage growth is still increasing. However, it's flattening out. It's not like year over year increasing. So maybe that means that, and this is a check on the column for the Fed not increasing rates come November 7th, because if inflation is slowing, maybe they just wait, another month, another 2 months, another quarters to see how much it slows, and then they reevaluate down the road. Now, the question everybody's been for years. I'm not sorry, not for years. Maybe for years, honestly, but at least for 6 to 9 months, people have been bracing for a recession to hit, right? And we're wondering why is there not a recession coming? Where is this recession? It's been the most called and forecasted recession maybe in history. This is an interesting little thing that goes with the baby boomer stuff we were talking about earlier. The idea is that baby boomers are the reason we haven't hit a recession, because they're spending. I saw a stat. I saw a stat. I don't remember the exact number, but baby boomers basically have trillions of dollars in discretionary spending available, and they're spending it. So despite these economic headwinds that we're facing as a country, we could be actually getting saved from a recession by the enormous amount of spending of those 65 years and older, because there's just, and this goes back to what I was saying before. I just think that they have this money. I think they want to spend it. They want to have fun. I think COVID probably made some people confront their own mortality and realize that the good times are enjoy the good times while they last, and so they're just going ham, and they're just spending as much as they can, as fast as they can. And despite the best efforts of Jerome Powell to stop spending, these boomers have just had such a good run of the economy for so long. They have so much money at hand that they're single-handedly saving the economy. This is just a thesis. A few people are talking about it on the interwebs. I don't know if it's true, but I think it's a fun one. If it's not true, I think it's fun to think about. So let's get to some other just sort of one-off fun things. Ozempic. If you had to choose the biggest trend in the next 10 years, it might be anti-obesity medications like Ozempic. I mean, this thing, if you haven't heard about it, Ozempic is the anti-obesity drug that basically has an amazing ability to allow patients to lose weight. It decreases appetite, and lots of Hollywood people are on it. Lots of people are on it, and if you look at these stats, it's only supposed to grow through 2030. The amount of millions of people that are going to be on these obesity. Obviously, America has an obesity epidemic already, so obviously something that can treat that epidemic will have a huge demand for use. Not only that, Ozempic is proven, and so because of this, because it actually decreases appetite, snack food grocery companies are actually seeing declines in their share price because people just aren't buying as much food. Fast food chains. It's pretty interesting. Beyond that, this headline is from Bloomberg, I believe. Ozempic shows promise treating kidney failure, and it's crazy how they can take something that's good and make it seem bad and blow to dialysis firms. Well, hopefully, the less dialysis firms you have, the better, right? Because that means people are healthier. But yeah, so Ozempic has not only anti-obesity effects, but it also seems like it may be able to help treat kidney failure in patients, which is awesome. So it's just a cool little thing. I would be, I'm going to keep on watching it. Just to see how it, plays out. I think it's on a macro societal trend. It's interesting. Of course, sometimes, these wonder drugs show promise, but then, we don't really know the side effects yet. So hopefully they're not bad, but only time will tell. Another little fun one that shows just how fragile the renewable energy grid is and why we still need fossil fuels despite the best efforts of the Biden administration to say we don't, is a Ring of Fire eclipse this weekend will send U.S. solar power plunging. I think there's about a 20-minute or less, maybe even less than 10-minute eclipse will eliminate instantaneously something like tens of thousands, 18,000 kilowatts of solar power immediately. People are expected to lose power because, the thing with the renewables is there's no continuity. The grid has no continuity. The battery tech is such that it's really hard to store power. You can use it, it's like in and out. And that's a huge problem for renewables, unlike fossil fuels that you can store and you can, maintain over the, a steady state over time, whereas solar, wind, whatever, you get it, you got to use it. Very hard to, the battery tech isn't good enough to store it on a large scale. So, of course, California, who's been a huge proponent of these renewable energy initiatives, is going to see huge power reductions. They already basically can't keep the grid open. So they have really hard problems with their grid already. So this will be interesting to watch and see, just how many holes it pokes in the renewable energy narrative. But yeah, so look out for that this weekend. On Monday, I guess we'll see the results on Monday. But that's it for Thursday. I hope you guys have a good rest of the week, and we will talk next week. Alex out.